Welcome to the EZCODE Projects Series Maze video number 10. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects Maze Series videos. For those of you that have done so, let's begin! In the last video, we applied our max library to the remaining maze logic and completed our refactoring of the codebase. In this video, we'll add some bling to our maze and sign our work for presentation. Remember, just type as I do. Pause the video or slow down the speed when needed. Understanding comes later. Let's begin. Let's open our maze project directory in VS Code. Open up VS Code, click the Explorer window, open folder, find where you put your project. There's mine, and I'll just open the maze. That's fine. I already have a few files open. I'm going to close these out for now. And what we need is the view HTML. So let's open up that one. And we're going to go ahead and get to it. So just under, let's see, the body tag. So here's our body tag, opening and closing tag. And we're going to put it right here in between the view container and the body tag. We'll make a new div, and we'll give it a class of header. And then we'll break open this tag. And right here, what we're going to do is we're providing a banner to the top of our maze to describe what it is. So if you came to the page or you were showing this off to someone, what are you going to call your maze? I'm going to call it Max Maze Craze because Max was the name of the library we created. It's a maze craze. It just rhymes, just goes together. So go ahead and call it yours, whatever you'd like. Either way, type it in right here. And we just have our closing tag right there. I'm going to make a little bit of space between our next div. And so all we have to do here now is just save our work before we move to another file. And let's go ahead and we'll give it some style, and then we'll go to the browser and we'll look at what happens. So we'll go to our style CSS file right here, and we haven't added any CSS to this project yet, but if you remember from the setup series, here's where we put our defaults, and then we'll put our CSS below here. So I'm going to open that class up that we just declared in the view HTML, and we'll get some curly braces going. And now we're just going to run through some flex properties, and we'll go through each one of these. We're going to do a display flex, and we're going to use a flex property of align item center. So calling the display flex allows us to use align item center. So that's going to, we'll go over where that centers, but we're going to give it a height of 80 px, and we'll start with a background color of the hexadecimal. So we got a 027011, and we'll go over that color. You can see it's already green. VS Code's already provided that. And color always goes to the font. So we're going to do a white font in there, and we're going to say the font size. We're going to go with 40 px because it's a big banner. And we're going to go ahead and call a font family on this one. And we're just going to say sans serif. That's the type of font we're going to use for that. And we'll just justify content center. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to grab my justify content and I'm going to move it up here. Because justify content is a flex property too. And I'm just going to keep these three together. So as long as you have it in there, but if you like to organize it a little bit, keep it around the flex property. And the next piece of this, we're just going to scroll up to the view container, and we're going to go ahead and give a background color here. So we'll go background color, and we're just going to do shorthand for the color white. Now, let's save our work here for the style CSS, and we're going to do one more thing while we have this open. We're going to go to our library file over here on the left and scroll till we get our value. Here it is, a little value library down here. And let's go ahead, we're going to miniaturize this up. So we're going to go columns 20 and we're going to go rows 20 for our display. Now that we have this done, we're just going to save our work, make sure all of these have been saved. And now what we can do is we can open the browser and let's go look and check out our bling. I'll open up the file, open file. We always load the view HTML. That's what gets loaded in the browser, which calls the rest of our files. Open, and here we go. We have a header at the top, and I'm just going to go ahead and inspect this. And if you wish, as we're going through this, you don't have to use these type of colors, but you can come in here and say, okay, here's our header. So these are all the CSS properties that were associated with it. You can see align items, what it's doing, and justify content is the left and right. So up and down, left and right. The height, of course, it's going to be bigger than the text. So in this case, if we take the height property away, you see it just miniaturizes to the size of the text. And then if we took the font size out, it would size to the default font size of the browser. So we have a large font size, we have a large height, we have the background color, which you can go in and change up all you want. I'm not going to. I'm going to keep that green for now. And let's see if there's the default browser font. So we have sans serif. So you can see everything that we have in here. Anything you want to change, go ahead and just make sure you update in your file. But for now, we have everything that we're looking at here. We got our bling started, and it's starting to look good. So let's just return to our work, and what we're going to do now is we're going to add a signature so everyone knows who to thank for creating this work of art. So let's go back to the view HTML file. So I'm just going to close a couple of these out here. We got the view HTML open, and we're just going to continue from this point. Okay, so we are in the view HTML, and we need to add a little bit of another div for our signature. So let's go ahead and just come in here, and we're going to just add it into the view container. So here we're going to say we're going to give a wrapping div class, and we're going to just invent this class. Signature is going to be the name of our class that we put in our CSS file. And then we're going to just put two divs inside of here, and we're not going to give them a class. And it's going to be created by, and I'm just going to copy paste this here, and this is where you're going to put your name. In this case, I'm going with EZCODE, and here you can put, whatever you'd like to put for your name on that one. And then let's go ahead and save our file. So we'll go ahead and save the file. We'll open up the CSS, our style.css. And if you can imagine, we're going to open up a signature class. So we have our curly braces open, and we can start typing. Here we're going to be a little bit different. We're going to call a font family of cursive, make it a little bit fancy. We're going to give a margin top to the signature to give some space. And now we're going to break into the child components, which, if you remember, the signature div was the wrapping div. Then we had two divs inside. So I'm going to just call the element div, which will apply. Well, that's not too friendly there. We don't want that. So what's going to happen here is this is going to get rid of that semicolon. This is going to be applied to both divs that are in there. And just like before, up here, we're going to do a display flex. Very popular property to use with organizing and moving elements around. Justify content, we're going to center it. And then we're going to give a line height, which is, think of this as the height of think of like college rule or like normal ruled paper when you're writing on it. You can have a row that's has a larger height or not. So we don't want too big, and so we're going to set it to 1.5, and we'll go over that when we get to the browser as well. And we'll give a font size a little bit different here. We're going to go with a 30px, and we'll do a color. In this case, it's going to be a 7, and what is that, like a little bit of a gray there. And now we're going to target, so this applies to both divs, and what we're going to do now is we're going to do a special property for CSS. We're going to say ampersand first child. So this says, like, kind of like include me with the div. So it would be the same as saying something like div first child, but this is nested in here. This is brand new types of CSS that we can use, and we're going to say and the first child. So apply all this, but also only the first div apply this. So this is what we're coming down to. So we're going to say we're going to overrule the font size that was declared there, and we're going to say for this special piece, we're going to say font size 20px, and we're going to give it a color. We're going to override the color, and we're going to give it a slightly different, a little bit lighter. So you can see we're default setting it for every div that's inside the signature div right here. Inside of this applies to both of these. And then we're going to override one of those for the first child, just a couple of the properties. So let's go ahead and we'll save our work. And then let's go refresh the browser and see if we did anything. So we'll go here again and we'll hit refresh. And we do see something now. So we have created by EZCode. You can see there's definitely a color difference between this one, and definitely a font size. So you can see how we're applying that with those classes, those nested classes that we put in there. And we probably don't want this side by side though. We want it probably more top and bottom. And so since we're generating the maze using JavaScript, there's nothing to really move around. I can't move the maze HTML here. Let's open this up. We have a signature, and then we have the maze here. We make this with our programming code. So we can't just go into the view HTML file and move it up here and move the signature down there. So what are we going to do for that? How are we going to do this? So we'll have to order them using CSS, or at least that's one thing that we can go about doing. So if we selected the view container, because that's the enclosing container, which you can see right now, it's left and right. You see those two squares with that, like that dotted line going down between the maze and our signature. And we have another flex property that we can use. So if we went into here and we said, okay, let's go flex direction, and let's say we want a column like this. That's what we want, but we want created at the bottom. So what if we did a column reverse? So already we can see just a flex direction column reverse. None of these moved. Signature is still on the top. This is on the bottom, but yet we reverse the column, forcing created by EZCode to the bottom. So that's what we need. At least that'll do it for what we need for now. So while we're here, it still seems like we're missing something. So how can we really showcase the power of our maze generator? What if we added a button so that we could generate a maze whenever we wanted to? This is the power of programming. We are really only limited by our imagination. So if we want to add a button, let's do it. Let's return to the style CSS file and add the property to the view container CSS class that we just generated here, the flex direction, and then we'll create our button. So in the style CSS, which we have open here, we just need to add the property flex direction column reverse, and we're going to add that. Once again, we are up at the view container, so why don't we just go below here, because these are all flex properties, align items, justify content, and display flex. And we'll say flex direction column reverse. And I'm just going to save that quick, return to the browser. Let's just refresh to make sure nobody's kidding anybody. And there it is. We got our flex direction. So back here, we had saved, we had added the flex direction, and we just saved our work. And now we're going to head over to the View HTML. So let's click that tab. If you haven't had it open, just open it here on the left. And let's go ahead and add a button. So where are we going to put a button? So let's see here. We could put it above. I kind of want to keep it in the view container here, so why don't we just start doing that? Do we want it above or below the signature? You know what? For now, we'll just go ahead and say we're going to stick it below, and it's going to be on click, and we're just going to equal. Now remember, this is where we access the EZCODE library. So if you remember the setup series, this is right here, constant EZCODE. This will be exposed to the browser, which means we can use it here. So we need to say EZCODE. And now for the function name, well, we're just going to use our function that we created, which was the maze generator. And then we'll call it like that. We'll close our button, and now we'll give our button a name. So now we have an EZCODE maze generator. This is going to be called onClick when the button's clicked, and the button is going to have a name of new maze. So go ahead and we'll save our work here, and we'll just might as well go to the browser again and make sure this is working here. So we'll go ahead and refresh our file, and we can see that the button is in between the maze and our signature. So it might be better to have the button on top in clear view. So how could we do that? We could move around our HTML. So we could go in here and say, okay, well, maybe if we put the button here, but we're doing flex direction column reverse, which is making it go up here. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on. But there are some CSS properties, and that's what CSS is for. So let's look at how we can do that. And we could use another flex property. It doesn't start with flex, but it's part of a flex property. And let's just add it to the button on the right side. So we're going to click the button here, and we're just going to add the property up here in the element style, and we're going to say order, just one word, order, and we're going to say order 1 and see what happens. Wow. Like, what's going on here? Why is this thing going up there now? So to think through this, we have a container here, and we have signature, button, maze. And if we reverse that, we have maze, button, signature. So let me just go back to the button here and just get rid of this real quick. So does that make sense? We have signature, button, maze, but we have the reverse of that. So we have maze, button, signature. So we know we have that. But what we did is, by giving an order of 1, or really any number other than, well, let's see what 0 does. You see 0 doesn't do anything, so it keeps it in its order that it's in. But by forcing a number on here, and this could be 1000, doesn't matter. In this case, it's going to be 1, and it's going to be the only one that we order. If we did do other orders, if we added a few more on here inside that are inside this flex container, like here, signature, let's give one to signature order 2. Now, of course, we're reversed, by the way, so that's why it's inverted that way. But we can go ahead and give specific orders to items. By just giving it to the button, we just automatically get it forced to the top. I just wanted to showcase some of the different properties of flex. It's real popular in the CSS land, and it works fantastic in all the browsers. So we have our button with the only one with the order 1 property. And we can see that our HTML hasn't changed at all, but our button is now at the top, which is where we want to put it. So let's first close the gap between the button and the header, because there's too much space there. So this space right here isn't really presentable. So what we could do is go to the view container, because that's the enclosing scope, and we could say justify content. So instead of center, again, we're talking about everything in here. What we could do is, And you can always walk through the different properties you can do here and see which one fits. Center isn't fitting, end, no. What about flex end? So that's good. Flex end actually puts us up here really close, and then we could just add a little bit of margin later on. So let's go ahead and we'll go back to our style CSS, and we'll do that work there, because what we're going to do is we're going to style the button as well. So let's go and transfer the work that we did do. Remember, it's the justify content and view container. We're going to do that one, and we're going to do the order one property. So go ahead and in VS Code, we'll get the style CSS. Once again, we'll go to the view container first. There we go. And we weren't adding one, we were changing this. So this is now flex end on the justify content. And then we have to add a little bit more information here. So, whoops, let me just go in here, and we're going to say, we're going to go below the signature here, and we're going to say, sorry, this is going to be button. So we're using an actual element in this case, just like we use div or anything else. You can use classes. They start with a dot. Buttons or elements do not. So we'll call a button since we only have one on the page. And we're going to give it a margin. And if margin is followed by two numbers, the first number is the top and bottom, and the second number is the right and left. So the top and bottom, we're going to add 40px, and the right and left, we're going to add 0. We're going to give it a height of 40px, and we'll do a background color here, and we'll just do a DB, what is it, 8612. And I get these in the browser, and then I add them. So this is going to be the color of our button. It's going to be an orange one. We're going to take away any border on the buttons by saying border 0. And then we're going to round our button off by saying border radius 4px. And then we're going to give it a color of the text that's in the button. We're just going to go with the default white. And then we have a font size we will declare here of 20px. And padding we're going to add, once again, just like our margin above, if there's two numbers, we're going to say top and bottom has 0 padding, and the right and left have 20px on the padding. So here we go so far, and if we're going to not forget one more piece that we have to put on here, and that's the order. So we're going to go ahead and give it an order of 1, and then we should be able to just save our work here, and then let's go back to the browser, and we'll go ahead and refresh and see what we've done here. So we still have our button on top. Once again, let's go look at it. It's bigger. We can see that, the button. You can see the margin is the orange that's up here and down here when I highlight it. And the padding, it's green. It doesn't really look green, but it's on the right and the left. So padding's on the inside, margin's on the outside. And if we look in here, let's see, we can see it here. If we were looking, here's the button. Here's the padding, left and right, and then you can see here's the margin, 40 and 40. So we got some space here, looking pretty good. And let's see, just to click this and see what happens so we can see what error messages come out. So we can see that uncaught type error, EZCODE maze generator, that's what we declared in our HTML file, is not a function. No, it isn't, because we haven't exposed it to the EZCODE object yet. So that's what we're going to do next. So we just need to go back here, make sure we got everything saved here, and we'll go to our code.js file now. So we have, if you recall, the onClick method, and we added the button. We started it with the EZCODE, so EZCODE dot, and then if you remember from the EZCODE setup series, that's where we created that object, and we exported it globally. So EZCODE is globally available. So even if I went here and went into the browser, this is where, there it is. And what is it returning? It's returning just an empty, there's just an empty object here because we haven't added anything to it. So we need to expose our maze generator function to the view HTML by returning it from our EZCode code base. So let's go there real quick, and we'll go to the code.js file where we were. And now what we can do here is just at the bottom, we can just kind of scroll down all the way here. It's a good place to keep things, and you can see we're just returning an empty object. So this is where we would say, okay, we need a key and a value. Now there's shorthand in JavaScript where if the key matches the value, you can just put 1. In this case, we're going to name our maze generator the same name that it is up at the top. I'm just going to add a couple spaces here. So us doing it this way in shorthand is the same thing as doing this. So you can see, well, that's kind of too much there. Why don't we just do 1? So it's just a syntactic sugar is the term where it's like, hey, it'd just be nicer if we could just do this. And so the compiler understands that, and that's why we'll get maze generator. Now we could do comma and add other things and still use the same key value pattern. But this is all we want to expose, and this will be good. So there's a problem though, because our maze generator function expects the maze element passed in. So if we go up here and the function says maze generator element, and if you remember in the view HTML, we're not passing anything in here, and we really don't have access to it to even do it. So we might have to do a quick refactor to allow us to do it this way. Or we could create another function and then grab it globally and pass it in. But let's just stick with our maze generator. So let's change our code up a bit, and we can see our maze constant. Let's see, where are we at here? So we see we have these things here. So we can see we're passing in the maze generator here, which is just the maze here, which is just the parent div, which also uses the view to add it. So there's a bunch of things going on here. Now, this const is only available within this scope. So we've declared it inside these brackets, and we can't get it over here. That's why we're passing it in. So this is what comes down to scope. And this scope is like another name for context. It's like, okay, who knows who, and what can someone do? So we have an enclosing scope, which is the EZCode function here. So if we declare something up here, it's available to everything inside. But if we declare something in this scope, it's only available inside of this scope. You can't, although we can reach in, we can't reach out. So what we need to do, if we really want to see this, is let's go ahead and let's take all of these here. So we're just going to cut them out, and I'm just going to clean up this empty space here. We're going to go right below the load, and we're going to put them there. I'm just going to clean up a little bit here. So we have our two constants being declared, and then we have our set, and then we have our maze. So now let's rename our const, because right now we moved this out here. Now this might have an issue because we are using maze elsewhere. So where are we also using maze? If you come down here, let's see, they'll just do here it is, line 21, which may or may not be the same line for you, but there should have been a constant maze in the maze generator. And so what we need to do is we can either change it here or we can change it up here. So I'm going to go ahead and change it up here, and let's just call it what it is. It's a maze container. And now that we've changed it here, you can see it's not highlighted because it isn't used yet. We need to change it here because now this is different. And then we're passing it in here. So this is different. And now that we've renamed that, let's see, we need to remove the element. So down here, we need to say we're not going to pass you in anymore. So we still need to call maze generator on load. So we have an initial maze. And then maze generator, we don't need to pass this in anymore, which if you remember, this is still getting used somewhere in here. So let's keep moving down and we'll find out where that was. So let's see, we have one more and it's just at the bottom where our element was. And it was right here. So this maze is going to stay. This is internal to our maze generator. If you remember, that's the constant up here. That's okay. But element changed. And remember, we're not passing it in anymore. So we have the access to the global maze container here easily inside of this function. So because it's outside of this scope, we can use it inside of this scope here. So we did a lot of work. So let's save our work and refresh the browser. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this dot here by saving. We'll go to the browser and let's go ahead and refresh. I don't see any errors in the console. So let's click our new maze button, see if that's working here. Okay, hey, something happened. But what happened? Maybe not exactly what we wanted to happen. So calling our maze generator function did not clear the last maze and instead added a new maze. So we'll first have to clear out our maze before creating a new one. Now we first need to clear out, well, the old maze, and then what if the browser had a handy method we could use that did that for us? So also note it squished our button. So we can see here that our button got squished and that's because our button doesn't have height, which is fine. We don't need it right now if we can just generate one maze and not generate two. So let's research a bit on the handy method we were talking about. We'll open up a new tab here. I'm just going to do a search for MDN, which is Mozilla Developer Network. Just type in MDN when you're looking for JavaScript types of questions. And we're going to say replace children. And we can see, hey, MDN Web Docs, element, replace children. It does have some form of method, and let's go see what that does. So the element replace children method replaces the existing children of a node with a specified new set of children that can be a string or node objects. So if you remember when we were going over append and append children, and it was very similar to this. So append children, we were just adding, you could add one, two, or many, and we were using the ellipsis with the array, if you remember that, to redo that. So this is very similar. So this will work just handy dandy with our, instead of using our append method. So let's go back to our library.js file. So we'll kind of close this tab out here. We'll go back to the library.js file. Mine's not open, it's right here. And this, we're going to go down to, here we were appending it right here. So instead of append, I mean, this isn't going to change. Our logic here says if you show up and you're not, this one, if you show up and you're not an array, we'll put you in an array. If you are an array, then we'll just consume you. And we use the ellipsis to spread it open so that you can get what it was showing there, param, comma, param. This is what we're going to add here. So we're going to say element instead of append. We're just going to get rid of append now, and we're going to say replace children. And so we have element dot replace children. Make sure you get the capital C. That's the only change that we have to do here. So notice how we can make a quick change to our library and our entire code base will just use the change everywhere when we call the $add method. So let's save our work and we'll go and refresh the browser and see what did we just do. So we'll go over here and we'll say, okay, browser, and we're just going to do a quick refresh. And what just happened? Now, where did our button go? Where did our signature go? In the browser console, let's examine the view container and say, hey, what's going on here? This is a bit different. And we can see the only thing left is the maze container. So can you think about what's going on? What did we just do? We did the dot replace children. We know that's running on the view container. So when the view container, when the whole logic kicks on, let's just actually go to the code and see what's going on here. So if we go in the code.js file, and we're going to go to the top here and we're going to look, okay, so we have the view container, that's what this is, and then we're going to make this, and then we're going to set a couple things on it, and then we're going to add it. And add it's going to call the replace children. And what are the children of the view container? So if we go here, we look, anything inside of here is. And now we haven't built the maze yet. We haven't appended it yet besides the parent div. So it's going to go in here first and it's going to say delete everything here and then add the maze. So that's where our signature and our button went. So we need to change the behavior in our favor. So let's add another HTML element to use as our parent div, but just for the maze. So in this case, we'll stop using our view container and we'll instead append it to a new div, like a hook. We're just going to put it in here and we're going to say, this is now div ID. And in this case, whatever you name this, just make sure you keep that naming convention, the rest of the information that I'm about to show here. If you don't call it max maze, no one's going to see this. So if you want, just for safety's sake, call it max-maze, because that's what we're going to reference later in the files. So let's save our work here. And what we need to do is we don't want to add a string to our code base. So let's go to our library and we're going to go up to our value and we're just going to put in, instead of the view container, we're just going to say, and this is the only place you'd have to keep the name if you changed yours. So just back to here real quick, whatever name you put here, it better match this name right here. So notice, once again, here we are, and we just had to make a slight change to our library with no corrections to our code base. So let's go ahead and save this file. And let's go back to the browser and let's go ahead and refresh it. And yes, everything is working. We now have a fully dynamic maze maker. So nice work, everyone. Let's just click it around too and have some fun with it here. Yep, there's our random maze. Our button's working. And we can see that we have created by, everything's looking good. I don't know if I can close this. So in this project, we did a lot of coding. We created our own library. We consumed it in the code base, making our code a bit cleaner and easier to read. Now, in the future, after you have completed a few projects, look out for a project where I'll show you how to save all your projects online, where you can then showcase your work when looking for your first programming job. We have now completed this maze project. If you've enjoyed this video, click like and then subscribe buttons to get notifications of new content. Thank you for exploring programming with me, and I'll see you in the next project.